Sounds good.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. Atomic Habits. It's Wednesday. Today is July the 12th. We're going into a hot weekend in many more ways than one. Hot weather-wise, as well as the hot real estate-wise. Man, we've got a great guest here today. And then, hey, Russell, how are you? I'm going to turn things over to Russell. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm doing great, Tom. We're here with 1,500 of the movers and shakers in San Antonio at the Build Conference. I know normally we have 30 plus people on this call, so my guess is a bunch of them are here and maybe trickling in a minute. But yeah, we're learning great stuff. I tell you, I'll add something from this conference that's non-real estate. There is a guy named Gary Brecka. If none of you have heard of him, he has a fitness and genius when it comes to personal health. He was absolutely impactful on me, talking about the different things that you can do, to improve your life. He has a really cool test that you can take. And essentially every, disease that's out there is curable in a natural fashion from the stuff that comes from the earth. And he had facts to back it up. It wasn't like it was some, pie in the sky thing. So Gary was really impactful for me from a non-real estate perspective while we're at this conference. And of course, all of the Rockstar real estate folks were here with, you had Bill Pipes, and of course, Brent went yesterday. And who was the lady that had the click funnels, Tom? I'm trying to remember. She was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, Krista Mayshore. Yeah, she was an absolute rock star. So I signed up for her stuff and excited about driving my business when I get back. I'm very lucky today, and I'm glad we're recording this because I'm going to make sure everybody in my group, I have about 100 that are going to see this. We got Michael Friedman today here. I actually met him. Was it NADP or NRBA, Michael? Was it NADP, right? Meeting?
And right, correct.
Yeah, it was the NADP meeting that Michael and I happened to sit next to each other. And then I realized I was sitting next to an absolute rock star that creates essentially policy throughout the United States when it comes to, everything, default, lending, you name it. He's been an expert in the industry for a number of years and has spoke at some of the most prestigious conferences in the country. So we're very lucky to have him. And hopefully you read the invite for today, because what Michael is going to do is answer your questions when it comes to all things real estate that happen to be in his area of expertise, which is vast. And so what I thought I would do is let Michael do a better job than me talking about, who he is and, what he does. And then from there, I'll ask him the, first question that I have regarding, real estate and how we improve production. What do you got, Michael? Tell us a little bit, do a better job than I did.
Well, thanks, Russell. Thanks for the invite, and thanks for having me. Look, I've been doing real estate since I was a young kid. My grandfather was a developer, my mom was a broker, and my dad was a broker. So I was kind of indoctrinated into the lifestyle. I started off in real estate as 18 years old, bought my first house. I realized that most people didn't want to buy a house from an 18-year-old. So I got into a little bit of mortgage lending, and then ultimately that landed me at a title company. Became a title officer when I was about 21 years old. Actually, that's when computers were just starting to become prevalent. So I was able to figure out sectionalized land and all sorts of different difficult properties to find here in Southern California. I migrated into private money lending, that migrated into becoming underwriter for large banks. Got to be a point where I was the senior underwriter or division manager for a large bank in the 90s, spun off, did my own wholesale operation. 2008 happened, and then I became one of the largest brokers in Southern California with REO. Closing well over 1,000 transactions in about a 4-year period. And that included loss mitigation and remedies to keep people in their houses, because that's what my goal is always, is to try to keep you in your property. That's rotated into back into the private money arena. I'm currently financing industrial, commercial, various different types of projects. We have a build in Atlanta for 115 million. That's 60 stories. We have a build in Pasadena that we're working on. So We have a transaction in New Mexico where we're going to be building 600 houses out there. So I've kind of graduated along the way from being a title officer to a mortgage lender, a mortgage underwriter, and then private money lender, and then ultimately the loss mitigation aspect to it all. So I've covered the gambit of origination. The only job I really haven't had is a escrow officer, which I don't wish on anybody. But that's basically the summary of what my background is.
It's funny, Michael, that you mentioned prior to computer days. My one of my jobs right after I worked at a title company too, by the way, and right after that, I worked for a company called Daily Default Info Service, and we had one of those dot matrix printers. Did we just lose Michael?
No, I'm here.
There you are. We lost Tom. I was like, wait a second, Tom disappeared. Anyway, we have one of those, remember those things? And we would print out like 150 daily defaults, right? Notice of defaults, trustee sales, and REOs. We would threefold and put them in envelopes and send them out. And there were some high-tech people that had fax machines. And so a number of those guys, we would fax each day all of the defaults. So it just reminded me of those days. I'm gonna kick it off with the first question, and so I want everybody else to think of a question for Michael on driving business. But my first question for you, Michael, is this: I know you and I have attended a lot of these default conferences lately, and it feels like there's a shift when it comes to all of these folks, and there's different entities that are financing stuff now than there was before, of trying to not end up with REOs, right? I mean, I'm still getting a decent flow of REOs. I'm an REO guy. But what would you say is the biggest opportunity for real estate agents to drive their business pre-REO, right? It looks like the banks and then, the funds and all of those folks are trying to keep people from finishing the foreclosure process and actually taking them back. And there's a lot of places that a real estate agent could plug in along the way to drive their business. And what would you see as the number one opportunity? And then if you could get really strategic, if you were a real estate agent, what exactly would you do?
Well, it's a question of how can you serve those people in that situation, and what's in your toolbox to serve those folks. So, I have brokers that refer clients. They're door knocking. If you want to get involved with this space, you're not going to be able to mail a letter, make a phone call. You have to actually physically go to the door and door knock. Face to face is really 90% of it. So of the folks that I work with, they're door knocking. So there's a company called Atom Data. That's a company that I utilize for data, which is ATTOM Data. I have nothing with that company, just a service that I use. They give you pretty straightforward information. It's $100 a month per state. So I go through that process when someone either calls me, who's a client, like one of my brokers that I work with. For example, yesterday I had a broker contact me looking for private money to get somebody out of a foreclosure, and this is a non-owner. So with what Russell was saying is there's a HAF program, and the HAF program in like the state of California still has close to $600 million to get people out of foreclosure, and so I don't think there's going to be a lot in the way of fallout. Back in 2010, Obama and Schwarzenegger here in California basically made it almost next to impossible to foreclose upon someone. And those rules have basically just gotten to be more and more, let's just call it favorable for homeowners. So it's the non-owner properties, it's the properties that are rotating. You're going to see a lot of people that are being foreclosed upon by FHA, and those are folks that have done reverse mortgages. And those reverse mortgages are now being called because either the spouse doesn't want the property, it doesn't exist, or the family members have realized that all the equity has been usurped, and now those properties are rotating to go into foreclosure. So the homeowner part of it is that it's about remediation or mediation, right? And if you look at, and Russell knows this from our conferences, is that they've like PennyMac and these other lenders are saying, we're not going to foreclose upon this person until we know there's no more equity, right? No more equity in the property. So the takeaway from these conferences and some of the commentary from the asset managers or the servicing managers is that if you're an owner occupied we're going to work with you. If you're a non-owner occupied, then the chances that they're going to work with you are very slim unless you have some extenuating circumstances. And then ultimately, those properties being rotated. So if you actually see what's going to the auctions, it's the non-owners, it's the deaths, the 3Ds, default, death, and divorce, right? So those are the three functionaries of the marketplace right now. Because, and I'm, not to beat the topic, but no one's getting out of their 3-4% mortgages. No one's rotating out. If anything, they're going to rent the property and buy somewhere else and take a HELOC or a HELoan and rotate out. So.
Yeah, very cool. Atom Data, I looked into that too, and I think it's actually better than my property radar. And so we're probably going to transition at some point. That has been a really good data source.
They give you phone numbers, and some of them actually work. So, and they give you emails and some other stuff. So it's just like you don't have to, and they have an API product where you can tie it into your computer or your website, and makes it really seamless, such as printing out data, then faxing it over to somebody else so they can get some sort of actionable item going to people, homeowners, whatever, what have you.
Very cool. Anybody have another question, or you guys want me to keep firing away?
Keep firing.
All right. Michael, my next question, and by the way, Michael, and I'm just kind of going on what Michael's helped me with already, is, and I'm not trying to advocate or sell Michael right now, but I know a lot of us run into deals where like, oh man, we just can't get this done. The lender is either difficult to work with, or we don't think it's financeable. So I'm going to give Michael a little bit of a plug here. He has the ability to get some deals done, whether it be through hard money or creative financing or bigger deals or commercial lending. I get calls all the time from folks like, hey, do you know a good commercial lender that can help me get this deal done? Michael, what are the solutions that you have that most people don't know about that help save deals? And then, kind of what areas could you help this group in when it comes to a financing aspect?
So I'm just going to give you some analogies because some experiences recently. So we're working on a project and I'm pitching it to banks. And this is a development project, 60 units. Normally, 2 years ago, they would be fighting over this deal. They would be lending money out in heartbeat. They would just be like, hey, we want this deal. So I pitched the deal. The ask was for 42 million. And there's PACE financing. If you don't know what PACE is, just take a look at PACE financing. It has to do with energy conservation. And so long story short, I was talking to the banker and he said, well, we'll do this deal, but you got to have your contractor put 15 million in the bank. Well, the ask was only for, really, in this case, because the PACE financing was a different tranche of the financing, we were only asking for about 24 million from the bank. So of the 24, they wanted him to put 15 in the bank, which doesn't make sense for anybody to do that. You're basically borrowing your own money. So that is been my experience, is that banks are getting really tight on their mortgage lending process. They are not looking forward to financing big projects. And what has happened is that I have a relationship with hedge funds and money managers that are willing to fund these types of products. So that same product with no money, just the equity of the investor builder, we were able to get a 7.5% 2-year note with some favorable terms for extension if needed, including the PACE. So he got that finance, and we're starting to he's permit ready to go. So that was one example. I'll give you a different example real quick. In Atlanta, we're working with a client, very high net worth client. It happens to be a strip club. And as you know, the moral turpitude with any type of federal financing, no marijuana, no strip clubs, nothing like that. So we found a fund that would give him his first tranche of 8 million that acquired the land that he needed to acquire the properties next to him. And then we got them the basically this was 60 million for the build. So what it was is that we got the first part taken down with a private investor, and then we had a larger, well-known hedge fund step in with the second tranche, and they also have PACE financing too. So that's something that we'll start building probably later next year. That's a Georgia Tech, Georgia University. If you don't know Atlanta or Georgia area, they have a situation where they pay college education for everybody for free. So now they have this onslaught of people that are moving to the state and they need student housing. So this is actually a student housing building, 600 units, and it's basically backed by the local city and the local universities. Now, talking about a different type of product, we funded a marijuana warehouse in Michigan, which it's unique. Most people don't touch those type of things. You pay for it. It's a higher interest rate, 12%. But as Russell was indicating, most lenders aren't going to be in these arenas, and we've been able to find sources to fund these items. That is something that we started working on about a month ago, and we've got an LOI, and that's coming to fruition coming up this month. So the money's out there. It's just going to be more expensive, and you have to go out and look for it in different arenas. Got to be more patient. Going to need to provide more paperwork up front, and ultimately you're going to have to show an exit strategy. So Russell knows, first thing I ask him on any transaction, what's the exit strategy, right? So if you don't have a cogent exit strategy, then you're not looking, we're not going to lend to you because you're not well thought out. You're not a well thought out project.
Very cool. Those are some fun projects. I just want to make sure that I didn't get confused. The strip club owner is building 600 housing units for the universities.
Correct. Correct.
I have zero comment on that.
So basically,
So-
just to touch that on a little bit, he's looking to move on. He's a very high net worth guy, and he owns a bunch of different clubs. But in the case of this situation, it's in downtown Atlanta, and it's a natural transition for the housing, and it's needed. So it's wanted. So yeah.
Very cool. I'm going to be in Atlanta this evening, as a matter of fact. In San Antonio now, being
Yeah,
Atlanta.
well, believe it or not, there is strip financing available. That's basically the repackaging of loans. So that is strip financing. So
yeah,
you never know.
Yeah.
Right.
Michael, here's the other thing. So every time I come on, because I do a number of commercial deals each year, I get a ton of questions around, how did you get them done? How'd you get them financed? What's the first step? And so I'll throw like a situation out there right now. Like I'm doing another deal where we're doing a business sale, right? And within that business is owned a bunch of real estate. So it's actually a business transaction. It's not a real estate transaction. But my question is this: let's say that we had a smaller commercial deal, and either we wanted to take it down or we had a client that wanted to take it down, and they were either looking to syndicate the down payment or try to be creative on the down payment, but they had the deal. How would that look like? And what would their process be if they were trying to close a commercial transaction and they were either looking to syndicate the down payment or figure out some other creative piece and then put the financing in place? What would you take this group? Because again, most of these guys are residential and I get commercial questions all the time. And when it comes to the financing piece, I'm not the expert. What would that look like?
So the thing is that, once again, exit strategy. And then, as long as you have a good exit strategy of whatever you're going to do, that's important. But when it comes down to these types of individuals, so you might have multiple individuals or one or two, and it turns out to the personal financial statement, what's their balance sheet like? So if they have a strong balance sheet, of course, people with money are going to be able to get money just because they can leverage their existing assets. When you're getting into a situation where you have 5 or 6 guys and the net worth combined is maybe $2 million without real estate, it gets a little bit more tricky. It's more about execution at that point. If it's like I'm doing a property up in Oakland right now, it's a $1 million mixed use. There's a restaurant. The lenders won't lend on it because it has a bunch of graffiti on it, not artistic graffiti, but graffiti. So they are looking at the asset for ultimately, but when they're looking at the borrowers themselves, they're looking to see what the debt service would be and what kind of weight that's going to be on their personal financial statement. And then once again, I can't reiterate enough is that what's the exit strategy? So if we're going to rent, and the rents are subpar at this point, or there's no rents and we have to stabilize, they want to know what exactly is being done to stabilize. So in the sense of this Oakland deal that I'm working on, literally yesterday I got all the leases, and the leases are about 25% below market. And so now we're working on getting those leases updated. And then within a month, we'll start seeing those bank accounts or the deposits from those leases increase. Ultimately, DSCR, right? You have to cover the debt. We're going to be at a point where the owner of this property makes a lot of money, but at the end of the day, only shows very little. So we're going to work at their balance sheet. So basically, when you're reviewing a project before you go to a lender, you need to strengthen the borrowers, strengthen their paperwork, and get them to a point where they're attractive. Nowadays, with 8% Fannie Mae, 7% Fannie Mae type of loans, everything just getting that much more expensive, and it's getting harder and harder to debt service. I'll give you another example. I got a guy that has a request for 42 million. We're trying to find him a home. This is 3 different industrial units in downtown LA, and they're 50% occupied right now, so they're not stable. The area is in decline. These people are worth, $500 million between the 3 of them, but they still can't get financing, and they're trying to rotate out of a 6% interest rate, and what's being quoted to them is like 9-10% right now. But once again, they're not stable. They don't have an exit strategy. And it's just getting difficult for even the small guy, even the big guy, to try to find some money. It's just getting it all starts at home. If your financial statement's strong, then you're going to be able to go out and project. But even with these larger guys, with these larger projects, it's getting tough. It really is. It's getting tough.
Yeah, I'm surprised they can even get insurance with 50% occupancy. I know in my commercial buildings they like to see 70, so it does make it tougher for sure. I'm gonna circle back to residential for a minute again, because that's what this group is mainly made up of. You were talking about a lot of the reverse mortgages. That's what we're going back, and I'm 100% with you. A lot of what I'm seeing at the courthouse steps right now is reverse mortgages. And Michael, what I'm seeing actually is a bunch of them with a lot of equity. Those are the ones that we're actually bidding on. If we were to try to go out and get those listings ahead of time, is there a process through Adam or another resource where we could actually try to go out and save some of that equity for the beneficiaries?
So, it's kind of a weird situation. You might see it kind of ghoulish, but if you're going to be out there serving the general public, you got to do with the 3 Ds, default, divorce, and death. And this would fall into the death component. So you need to have some ability to contact the trustee or the attorney. So what you do is you go into court records and you find out who that individual is. And then you contact them and say, hey, Bob, I'm Mary or James, and I want to help you transition and try to get the most equity as you can for your estate that you're managing. I would love the opportunity to sell this property for you and try to gain as much equity out for the heirs. Sometimes you'll get a response, sometimes you won't, but you need to talk directly to the attorneys, and it's not that hard to find through the court record. So go on title, figure out the title, go into the court records, figure it out. It takes a little bit of legwork, but once you get in touch with them, once you get in touch with them, they're going to know 2 things. One, that you're a compassionate, empathetic person, and then the other part, you're a professional. And then lastly, you make that contact, and you're going to get business in the future from that individual. If it's not this person, it's somebody else. And for example, I don't do too many listings like that. I'm more financing than that. But I've had circumstances where people that I've helped along the way over the years, they're very active in that, door knocking, contacting attorneys, and they're getting listings after the fact from these attorneys. And it's just another source of revenue, another part of your toolbox to have these attorneys in your cadre. So go online, figure it out, find the address, find the attorney, contact the attorney, and try to show your worth and what can be resulted out of the transaction
All
for
right.
the
Well, let me
benefit of
so
the
last
patient.
question for you is what question you're like, oh, Russell, you should have asked me this today and you didn't. And here's the information I would have loved to provide for your group.
Well, you got to be diverse. And I have a property management company, taxes, real estate, obviously, and mortgage. And in the 2008 timeframe, I realized that you can't just be a one-hit wonder. You need to have a lot of different pipes. So my tax business gives me purchases, gives me refinances. My property management business gives me purchases and a source of revenue that's passive every month. My mortgage business gives me everything. I could do, I have an NMLS and commercial. You don't necessarily need an NMLS, but I could do a loan in any state and be diverse. And then, of course, my real estate license. It's just me, myself, and I in the real estate. My son actually works with me, but he does my website stuff. But basically, you just got to be diverse. Have flexibility. Really try to learn every single thing that you possibly can. I remember Russell, we were sitting in the audience and there was a lady talking about broker price opinions. And I was muddling under, this is actually how we met, is that I was muddling under my breath, like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Some of the advice that she was giving was just not spot on. And subsequent to that, I don't know if you knew this, Russell, but I did the BPO for 5 Star for them in Vegas. The next conference that they did, and anyways, we're always going to be learning from other folks. You don't always have to take their advice, but always listen to what they're saying, take it for what it is, and then apply it in your own world. But if there's any takeaway, you got to be diversified. You have to have multiple tributaries, and that's what's going to make you survive. We're about to go through a kind of a tough area, and it's not going to be where REOs are going to be prevalent. I think what's going to end up happening is that the government is going to step in and start buying commercial buildings and hotels. And if you look at some of the politics here in California, you're starting to see some of those funding mechanisms. They're looking to take over large projects so they could put the housing, homeless into housing. And you're going to see that. What that's going to do is that's going to degrade neighborhoods because who wants to live next to that? And the tax base is going to lower. So not to be, doom and gloom, just being realistic is that you need to be in the spaces where they're at. So if it's, if you have to branch out into a commercial world or whatever, out of real estate, out of residential, then you have to wear different hats and be prepared for it because when the low hanging fruit, okay, so I would imagine if I asked a question to the audience is saying, okay, when's the last time you wrote an offer and how many people wrote on that same property? Maybe 5, 7, 10 offers. How is it going to make you win that offer compared to another broker? How are you negotiating? What things are you giving up that doesn't really negatively affect your buyer in that offer process? So all of us have seen a decline in our sale commission revenue because there's a lack of inventory and the competitiveness of these offers. So, are you giving back free rent? Are you giving back maybe paying the other side's escrow and title? You have to be creative in your offer writing it's not necessarily price, your pricing anyways, it's not necessarily price. It has to be the net. But one of the problems that I'm seeing, because Russ and I talked about this a little bit, and I do valuations, is that I'm seeing properties in Lake Elsinore, California, that are, listed for 550 and they're selling for, 580, 590, 600. Well, there's no comps. So, how aggressive you're writing on the offers that you need to figure out how to bridge if there's a deficiency in the appraisal, and then finding other ways to win the bid. So look, you're not going to be in any driver's seat unless you win the offer and you get into the escrow. And at that point in time, it seems to be another negotiation at that point in time. So if the appraisal comes in low, that's a negotiation point. And if you're not familiar with appraisals nowadays, they stick with the property. If it's FHA, they stick with the property. The next buyer down the road isn't going to have the luxury to do another appraisal. And, Fannie, Freddie track this stuff, and FHA definitely tracks this stuff with their case numbers. So it really is incumbent upon these brokers to write a solid offer to begin with, and understand the different ways to win the offer and get the net highest best for the seller. So that's just the takeaway that I've seen in the last about year.
No, I've seen the same thing. It's funny. Don Yoakum and I had a disagreement last year. I'm not educated in a lot of stuff when it comes to life, and I have zero common sense if you ask my family and my wife. But economics is something I know relatively well, and there was just too many factors out there that said that there's no way prices are coming down, right? We dumped a ridiculous amount of money into the economy. Inflation was crazy. There's no inventory. The old interest rates, nobody's going to want to come out of those. And he and I had a bet that this May would be a difference from last May. And I won that bet significantly because there's no inventory and there's hyperinflation. I'm or close to it as we've ever had because of all the fake money that we dumped into the economy. And so you're spot on when I'm negotiating with buyers, because I'm a listing agent only, and luckily I have a decent amount of inventory. I'm telling them, hey, you got to be as aggressive as you can, and we have to be careful on price because, I was in lending. I do know how to help the appraiser. I try to make them as lazy as I can by giving them as much information that I want them to use, so we get as close to my purchase price as possible. But there's a lot of other money items that go into that doesn't have to do with the actual purchase price. So I love that, Michael. And then Tom's favorite saying is, you got to, skate to where the puck's going to be, right? Wayne Gretzky. And I love your insight on where the homeless piece is going. And I 100% believe you. We starting to see the preface of that in some of the government stuff. So, and I know we're a little over, so I'm going to hand it back to Tom to say our thank you. Thank you again, Michael. I appreciate it. We're going to have you on again when we're not all in San Antonio and we have 30 plus, because I think this was valuable.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite, and it's always good to share knowledge.
This is great. Yeah, awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? Well, hey, this was so informative. Whether you're working with buyers or whether you're working with sellers, this was extremely informative. I think my Wi-Fi is cutting in and out, but this Friday we have Overcome Your Fears at 9 a.m. It's Freedom Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific with Wally Bressler. So thanks to all of you guys. I appreciate you, Michael. Have a great day, everyone. See you later. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
Have a good day, guys.
Bye now.
Cheers. Welcome. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Hello.